start recording and then
You
start
mean streaming?
streaming.
Oh,
Well, both. They're two different stuff. So,
ah,
let's see if we are live. We go live in a few seconds. Got the channel open. All right, we are live. Okay, so um, welcome to the Hansem Reports podcast. Uh, basically, it's our episode one. Kingdom Hearts is the theme, and just as an introduction, I'm Isaac. And alongside me, I have Bernie, my co-host. Say hi, Bernie.
hello.
Hey.
Hi,
How you doing, Bernie?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm doing fantastic. Really excited for this first podcast.
Me too.
Very good. So, just as an intro to the Hanson Reports, basically we just two lifelong friends that want to just talk about the things that we love. So, we're just gonna talk about things pop culture wise in terms of in the news, and whatever we feel like talking about that week. So that'll be our main topic. So for this week, we're gonna be talking about Kingdom Hearts One, specifically Final Mix, and yeah. Anything else you want to add, Bernie?
We also occasionally talk about things that go on in the entertainment news,
Mhm.
be it from any upcoming movies, TV shows, anime or manga. Um, is there anything else that we cover? I think that's about it. Our main topic in the news.
Yeah,
No.
pretty much anything in like geek culture, I would say. Uh,
Yeah.
yeah. So it's pretty much just anything that's in the current, or it could be from a long time ago or whatnot. Like that. That's where like our main topic is. So that's just how we're gonna structure things. Um, so definitely let us know if that's something that you guys enjoy, or if there's any improvements we could make. We're definitely open to that. So
Constructive criticism.
yeah, exactly. We're we're here to try to bring out the best content for you guys. So I guess just to might as well just start out, right?
Yeah.
First segment, news topics. So what's in the news? We got first bit of news is sales, right? There's been a bunch of sales on little things such as Cyberpunk 2077. If you get it on, I believe on Amazon,
On Amazon.
yeah,
Mm-hmm.
Amazon they got it like $10 cheaper, so you can pre-order that from them, get a discount. Nintendo Switch controllers from Walmart, except those are running low on stock, so definitely hop on that if that's something that you're interested in. And then as well as DC Comixology is also having a sale, and some D&D novels as well.
I've always wanted to get into D&D. I feel like I may jump on those novel sales.
Yeah, now's as good a time as any. I feel like
That's true.
most of this probably is in part due to just the situation we're all in with the coronavirus. So a lot of people are just at home buying all these things, especially like video games. I feel like it's gonna um, is still I guess what would be the word? They're still at large with their stuff. Like things like Final Fantasy VII coming out, they still did well with like sales and whatnot.
High in demand.
Right, exactly. As compared to like a movie, right? Where
Yeah. Yeah, GameStop actually ran out of its Nintendo Switch bundles again.
oh damn.
Eh,
So
People are eating it up.
yeah, so basically, yeah, and in general, yeah, with that, and that's not even like part of our news, but in general, anything that I've tried to find on Amazon, they are either limited stock or somebody has already bought all of it. So definitely just if you're feeling like getting it, then snipe that purchase, you know.
Snipe that deal while you still can.
Exactly. Now, in terms of movies, right? We've got uh, what is this? We've got Venom, right? Venom uh, just recently came out with a release date. They pushed it back to it was supposed to be, I believe, October 2nd of this year was supposed to come out, but now it's going to be coming out in June 25th of next year, which ironically enough is actually taking the place of the Batman release date. Batman is now being moved from June 25th to October 1st. So just some release date changes, as well as with the Venom release date, there was the Venom title, which is Venom Let There Be Carnage. Which, what a title! Just your thoughts,
I
Freddie?
love how recently I found out that the newest Thor movie has one of the greatest names of all time with Love and Thunder. And now now we have Venom 2, Let There Be Carnage.
Yeah,
And it's it's not bad by any means, but it is so cheesy.
yeah,
But I think that there's a charm in that, you know.
yeah. It's one of those that I guess it's like neither of us have seen the first Venom movie. That's something I still plan on doing, but
One day.
it at least from what I've seen, it seems to just fall in theme with the way the movie is. So you know what, like why not? Like sometimes those fun titles are it's great. Like I always think of the Lego 2 movie, the second I think it's Lego 2 movie, the second movie or like the sequel or something like that, where it's just really on the nose. So and it just is telling of the type of movie it is.
Yeah, if it sticks with the theme of it, then that's great, you know.
Yeah. So definitely excited about that whenever it does release. Same with
I'm never
the
gonna
Batman.
not laugh at the. I'm sorry to interrupt you there,
Oh no, you're good.
but I, I'm never gonna not laugh at that title though. That's never gonna be not funny to me. That's a
Let
lot of
there be
double
carnage,
negatives.
man.
Let there be carnage.
Yeah. And then
Oh
actually
lord.
speaking of Venom, next bit of news we got the Venom writers from the first movie are actually now writing the live adaptation of One Punch Man, right? So that's definitely going to be interesting because I feel like in general, anytime there's animes being put into live action, especially live action like made by American producers, it's kind of all over the place. But One Punch Man is definitely something that I'm excited about because it's one of the few animes I've actually watched. And it's incredible, so I'm excited about that.
I am hopeful, for
Right.
lack of a better term, because it's true. Like whenever a Western director tries to make a live action anime movie, it's oh my god. We all remember Dragon Ball Evolution. It was
Or even Ghost in the Shell. Like,
yeah, but you know what I mean. Like
yeah,
it has the potential to be wonderful, but it has an equal amount of potential to just oh lord, it could be a meme. You
yeah.
know.
There's definitely too one of the concerns is that in the show, right? There's a few, I guess, um, similar to like the Marvel DC esque kind of jokes, right? Like poking fun at it, right? And like things like not Rambo, Rocky, um, like at least when I saw it, right? Because that was like my point of view. I was like, oh, there's like some of that, but then I noticed there was a lot of like tropes and jokes on like animes in general, right? So
Hmm.
it's one of those things where I'm like, will that translate to like our audience, right? Because the average like moviegoer might be thinking, oh, it might be similar to like one of those Marvel or DC movies, and then they go and then they're like, uh, this is a lot of these jokes I just don't get, right? Like they're not, it's not the same.
Yeah. Translating is a good word to use, especially because in anime there are a lot of times where they'll make a lot of puns in the original Japanese dub that work because it's a Japanese pun, it's a
Mhm.
Japanese joke, but when you translate it into English, it's just non-existent.
Yeah,
So in the dub, they have to replace it with something that either it'll miss its mark because it doesn't translate properly, or it's just a replacement that isn't funny.
right.
Um, so it'll be interesting to see like how they're gonna deal with just the comedy from Eastern to Western, and also how they're gonna deal with the action. Because One Punch Man is very, very over the top, and that's an understatement.
Yeah,
So, and that's part of its appeal.
Yeah, that's
The
what I always loved about it. How dramatic they just get for the simplest things.
exactly. So like it's really tough to do that kind of thing in a live action movie. Like because in animation of any kind, you can literally play with anything as much as you want, but in live action you're a lot more limited, you know?
Right. Yeah. Even like that's how I always feel with the difference between live and animation. Like there's little things that you can't do. Like one thing I always loved in that show was anytime they have Saitama's face just change from super serious to just his plain average face. You can't really do that in a live action sense at all, really. Uh,
Yeah, exactly.
but yeah, it'll be interesting. I'm definitely curious. Also, I'm really curious as to who's gonna play Moomin Rider. Um, that'll be. I think that's gonna be the MVP of that movie.
Moment
Because
Rider. He is the unsung hero of not just One Punch Man, dare I say all anime. He is the unsung hero.
oh man.
Oh Lord.
So
I'm keeping an eye on it though. I'm definitely gonna be keeping an eye on this
oh
because
yeah,
I
we'll
I
be keeping
wanted to
track of it.
I wanted
Yeah.
to do good.
Whether
I
it's
wanted
good or it's bad, this is one we'll be tracking. Now, and on other news, other delays and releases that have been delayed. Wait, what did I say? Delayed? Yeah, pieces of production that have either been delayed or have new release dates. Jesus Christ! So there's Cassian Andor, the Disney Plus series for Star Wars, was about 6 weeks into production, and they had to shut down. Um, there's also I'm just gonna group all these together. Uh, Multiple animes and manga have been delayed. Some indefinitely, like Boruto, and uh, yeah, but we'll just go over some of the highlights of those. So at least for me, like looking at Cassian Andor, I know it's it's one of those things in general. Anyways, like Cassian Andor, I think he's somewhat an interesting character, but with the show, I can wait for the show. It's not as much like for like the Mandalorian where I'm already kind of hooked with that guy with that specific character. Um, so it's unfortunate though that there's another production that basically had to come to a halt. But you got to do what you got to do.
Mhm. Oh, yeah, and on the anime side of things, there are a few big names that are actually going to be postponed. Like you said, Boruto is one of them. Um, the new season of Sword Art Online and ReZero, which people were looking forward to, is also they're going to be postponed for a bit.
Mhm.
Even like the really big names like Pokemon, the remake of Digimon Season 1 and One Piece, they're on hiatus for now. And again, like you said, it's unfortunate, but you got to do what you got to do in this time.
Right.
But for some of these, I know like for ReZero, people have been waiting a while for that, so I can't speak for everyone, but for me, I'm okay with waiting a bit longer, especially under the circumstances.
Yeah. Yeah. I can't wait until we start getting news where they just start saying, hey, these things are uh they're going back to production, right? They're going back into making the anime, going back into to writing the manga, so on and so forth. So like I feel like those will be the pieces of news that definitely will will also be telling and be excited about. So more so than
Imagine how many. Sorry, you finish your thought up.
no, I was gonna say more so than hearing that they're delayed. It's just kind of
It's a bummer.
yeah.
Imagine how many people are gonna surge to like movies, to movie theaters, and events once we're back to normal. That's gonna be crazy.
Yeah. Yeah, it will. Um
Like I
but
know in Florida this year they canceled the Ultra Music Festival. Next year, I know, um, and hopefully everything's back to normal by next year. Um, those tickets normally sell out incredibly quickly. They're probably gonna go out of sale like I don't know, maybe at double the speed next year.
Yeah, it's kind of ironic because like most of these things, like you would think that like to some degree, people are like, oh well, like once things go or start going back to normal, we're just going to ease our way in. But then there's going to be events like that where people are going to be itching, right? Like they're just going to be like, man, I haven't gone to Ultra in like 2 years. Like I'm gonna like get this ticket right now while I can.
Mm-hmm. But that's something to look forward to in the future.
Yeah, in time. Speaking of looking forward to, we have coming out next week, actually on May 1st, we have a TV show called Upload that's going to be on Amazon. And reason why we have this show on because this is actually made by Greg Daniels, who was a major creator of The Office and Parks and Rec, hasn't actually done any other shows until now. He's actually doing two. He's doing Upload, and in at the end of the month, then comes out Space Force, which actually also features Steve Carell. So both of these we're definitely excited about. We'll focus a bit more on Upload because that's one that coming out next week, and we'll probably be talking about in a future episode pretty soon. Um, but yeah, pretty much it's the idea of you upload yourself into a virtual reality, I guess, or like whenever you're going to pass away, you can have that option, and then you get it from the perspective of Robbie Amell's character. I don't know what his character is in the show, but either way, you go through his perspective, and essentially, it's kind of funny that at least their take on this is that even though you're still in like you're supposed to be in like a virtual heaven per se, it's still kind of like the real world where there still are like social classes and things like in-game or like not in-game but in-app purchases that you have to make in order to just do day-to-day things even though it's supposed to be just like where you go when you die. Like I just think that that's kind of funny how they frame this show.
The trailer is really funny when it shows him just walking up to something and then he'll get the little pop up saying like, "Oh, watch a 30-second ad to continue whatever it is you're doing."
Right. Or even like the simple things like they have a scene where he's just trying to get breakfast at like a hotel and
Mhm.
they say oh well it's 10 o'clock and then all the food just disappears and he's like it's not even real food like what like why
Yep.
why would you have these rules in place for us.
Yep. I'm looking forward to it because we're both big fans of Parks and Rec and The Office. So
Yeah, it definitely looks like a good watch, and I like that he's doing something that feels different from that, right? Because he's
yeah,
always done the, I guess that mockumentary style of show, and this is definitely something unique. Like I haven't seen somebody try to do something like this. Like the only show that comes to mind is The Good Place, like having a concept like this.
mm,
And I've always heard great things about that. That's one I have to watch. Like I know my sister watches that, and she always like raves about it. So definitely excited about this one.
yep.
All right. So then we have what's our next piece of news? We got uh, Rogue One writers. This one's just a little bit of a tidbit that, like tidbits of information that the writers had with IGN, and I I want to pronounce their say their names, but I'm afraid of mispronouncing them. The two writers, Gary Whitta and Chris Waits or Whites. I don't know. I'm sorry if I'm butchering them, but basically, they were hanging out with some of the people at IGN on a like a conference call, and they were basically just watching Rogue One, talking to them, essentially just getting like a their perspective on on the movie, and they just gave out little bits of what could have been in the movie. Things like potentially they had an idea, I guess, once where Cassian Andor was going to be a double agent, and Jyn Erso's mom was going to be a Jedi. Uh, then they also just go into details about like how excited they were to make Darth Vader appear in the movie and to the choice to have him appear in a Bacta tank specifically, right? Which was a really cool scene to see in the movie. Um, so yeah, just they went over some of these things, and I always just think that it's fascinating getting either writers or directors' point of view and their thought process into to making the movie.
That's true, especially when you can kind of get a glimpse of their headspace and see like what it is that they first envisioned and how that vision changed like as production went along, you know?
Right.
Cuz that happens a lot in anything really, like nothing stays the same at the end of production as it did when it first started. Like when they initially wrote down the script, you know?
Right. The first Star Wars itself is a great example, right? They didn't keep that crazy first title, so thank God for
Right.
that. Uh, the
Yeah.
yeah, I can't even like cite it. It's and the Wills of the Force of Luke Starkiller or something. Episode 1. I don't know. It it was a
You
mouthful. Trust me. Uh, So things like that. I think also Han was supposed to be like an alien. Um, it was it was a very different movie that first right, and it goes for every movie, right? There's never been any movie, at least that was decent, that just went from first draft and then right into production like nothing ever happened. So,
mm-hmm.
but yeah, some cool
Lasers.
concepts, and also sticking with Star Wars, we have Rebels. Star Wars Rebels just had I think episode 10 came out last Friday. I haven't caught up. I'm on episode 3 now. I know you're caught up until like right before this season started, right? Like you have season 1 and through 6, right, Bernie?
Rebels or Clone Wars?
Oh, excuse me. Oh, okay, yeah. I'm getting them confused. So, in Star Wars Clone Wars came out last Friday, right? I'm sorry, it's confusing because the guy I'm going to talk about, Darth Maul, is in both of them. So, uh, Darth Maul made an appearance in the Clone Wars, the final season that they've been airing these past couple months. So I was just gonna say I've been on episode 3, and then you're caught up with everything that they have on Netflix, right? So that's up to season 6.
I'm caught up to season 5, I believe.
Oh, okay. I think 6 isn't too long either, but definitely an episode I'll watch. But the piece of news we wanted to give was not where we are with the show, but where the show actually, as it is an animated show, they decided to have Ray Park, the actor for that plays Darth Maul in Episode 1, come in and actually do mocap for them. That way, then they could get some of his uh, physicality that he brings to that character and just be able to, when they animate him, get something as close to the actual guy that played him. And I think that's pretty awesome.
Yeah, the things you can do with mocap technology is incredible. And
Right.
we've been seeing a lot over the years how instead of making a 3D model from scratch, they'll just use mocap and base it off of the actor.
Yeah. Because they even said in this article that they didn't like use his fighting moves like pound for pound basically. They didn't just like copy and paste it, but they just tried to mimic like some of those things and some of the little mannerisms that he has, right? That you
Hmm.
can't that you don't really think about when you're just animating it, right? Like I guess like the way he's walking and his stance and the way he carries himself overall. And I think that's pretty cool because it makes the character more unique and feel more like the actual one you see on screen in episode 1.
Yeah, body language is incredibly important when setting up a character, especially in animation, because there are just so many little details that you don't pay attention to, but you do pick up on subconsciously,
Right.
and it helps like portray what kind of character they are without them having to do or not do to without them having to say anything.
Right. Yeah. The big thing would be also like over and it fits with body language is just facial expressions, right?
It's more than that. It's also I believe you told me about an example where when Obi-Wan fights Darth Maul again, Darth Maul uses his same exact stance that
Right.
he did the first time he fought him, but Obi-Wan uses a different one. And that shows how Darth Maul hasn't changed at all,
Yes.
both like mentally and sure he may have gotten stronger, but he's still doing the same things, whereas Obi-Wan has grown he's learned over these past few years. That's the kind of thing that body language can tell you just from the way that people stand before a fight.
Right. No, it's yeah, it's just it's with going to with that example. It's just then it makes it for better storytelling, right? Because it's just like in anything that's visual, right? Like whether it's an animated show or a live action show, they always say it's a show for a reason, right? They say show, don't tell, and that those are the little things that you can do that you can't do in writing, right? Like if you were to write the same thing in a book.
Yeah. It's a good example of it is actually in video games. Whenever you see like someone who's just this big hulking brute, you'll notice that they're always hunched over and they'll keep their arms up because that's what they do. They're brawlers. But
Mhm.
when you look at snipers, uh, they're they're typically standing still. You know what I mean? Like whether they're standing or crouching, they're not twitchy, they're not moving because that's what a sniper does. You know?
Yeah, I feel that.
Yeah.
So definitely, yeah, we're gonna catch up at some point because we love this show. I
Hmm.
just at this point I kind of am just waiting for the season to end and then I'm just gonna watch them all because like I've watched the first 3 episodes and like I finished that arc that they did and without question Dave Filoni just picked up right where he left off. He's he's my favorite storyteller right now in Star Wars. Like he's he's just incredible. Like what he's done with going back to Clone Wars, what he did with Rebels, and he even had a part in the Mandalorian. Like he helped John Favreau with some of the writing and directing of some of those episodes. So he's 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 the number one guy I would say in Star Wars.
He is a great storyteller. Like from the first time I watched the Clone Wars, like oh good lord, how long ago has it been now? I want to say it's has it been almost 10 years since Clone Wars came out? When
Yeah,
did it come out?
probably because Episode 3 came out 2005, and Clone Wars probably came out 2006, 2007. I want to say.
Yeah, that sounds about right. 2006 to 2008, around there. But I remember the first time I watched it back on Cartoon Network, I was completely hooked.
Yeah.
And every Friday, I'd sit down and watch new episodes. Even when they moved it to Adult Swim, it was amazing, phenomenal.
I'm just excited for what they're gonna give him next.
Yeah,
Like if they have any openings for any movies or any other TV shows, just throw it his way at
yeah.
100%. So
I think really quick. One thing I love about the way that he tells stories is how he kept a lot of things from what is now what is the expanded universe called now? Star Wars Legacies, Legends.
Legends,
Yeah, he kept a lot of that from in canon. Like for example,
right?
uh, from Star Wars Republic Commando,
Yeah,
he
Commandos
made
are
sure.
canon.
Yeah, he made sure to put the Commandos in the canon before they
Delta
would be
Squad.
thrown into the non-canon abyss.
Yeah, no, it's true. He's definitely always paying attention to those things, and I always do appreciate that.
Yeah.
Yeah, even the other big one that was a huge story thread in Rebels, which I definitely recommend Bernie you watch it because I know you haven't seen it yet, but it's it's like Clone Wars. It's pretty much just as good. I like Clone Wars a little more, but I just like the era more. But
Mm.
what's it called? He brought Thrawn into canon, right? And Thrawn was one of the biggest Star Wars legends that there was that just hadn't become canon yet, right? Like he
Hmm.
was uh I believe written by Timothy Zahn. There was like the Thrawn trilogy and all these other books that he made with him, and he was one of the best villains that they made um, during that expanded universe time. So definitely definitely excited for anything that they're gonna throw his way. So, anyways,
He
I think
respects the Lord.
yes, without question. I think that will conclude our news topics, right? Yeah, we don't have anything else for in that regard. Now we're going to go into our main topic. So this is what we like to call the meat of the sandwich, or at least that's what I'm calling it now. Uh, this is going to be a bit of a longer segment, but essentially we just like to dive as deep into a topic, right? Normally it's just going to be either a movie, TV show, video game, what have you, and we're just going to dissect it, right? From its story, themes, gameplay, depending on whatever it is, of course, and just give our opinions about it, uh, and just talk about it, really. So, in today's episode is Kingdom Hearts 1 Final Mix. Kingdom Hearts, I guess, just to give a background, came out back in 2002 in North America, and came out during a time when uh, there was a lot of 3D RPG or 3D platformers out, right? And it definitely shows in this game, right? It's competing with a lot of that. Um, Also, it definitely shows that it came out during a time when there was uh, during its era of Final Fantasy characters, because in case you didn't know, this whole thing, this whole mess of a franchise that we love so much. By the way, at least for me, my favorite video game franchise. What about you, Bernie? I don't know if this is your
Is this my
favorite,
favorite?
or maybe Metal Gear or something. I know that that's
It's
up there for you.
definitely it's definitely one of my favorite franchises, but it's really hard to pick just one
Right.
when it comes to franchises as a
It's
whole. You
it's
know,
up there. If you can't tell from the logo and from the name of our channel, it's up there,
it's up
right?
there. Yeah.
So, um, where was I going with this? Yeah. So came out during that time. Basically, in case you didn't know, its existence came off of as ridiculous of a story as the actual story itself, right? Where there was just a couple guys in an elevator who said, "Hey, why don't we just mix together a video game with Final Fantasy characters and Disney characters, right?" And you end up getting this game, right? So, and then we're here now. What about you, Brittany? What do you say? Any other things before we start getting into the nitty gritty of this?
It's been almost 20 years. Am I right?
Yeah,
2002 to now? Yeah, almost
almost.
20 years. Oh my lord.
At this point, it's an adult. It's at least 18. Or it's gonna be 18
It
at least
it,
this year.
it can't it can enlist in the military, but it can't drink yet.
Well, I mean, does that still apply for Japan? Because it would be a Japanese. Let's see,
You're
I don't
making
know.
me think.
I don't know how their
Um
rules work, but whatever. Point is,
Point is, yeah, this friend. I don't know if if I can say like that it is my favorite without a doubt, because like I said, I can't pick one favorite, but it is definitely it's been with me through my entire life pretty much. You know what
yeah.
I mean? Like I've pretty much grown up with it, lived with it, and I still can barely make any sense of it, but I still love it.
We'll try to make sense of it now. So I guess we'll start with the story, right? So definitely, at least for me personally, it's probably my favorite story out of all the ones, out of all the Kingdom Hearts games when you look at them individually, and it's probably because it's just the most simple story that there is, right? Like it's really just about this kid trying to find his friends, this dog and this duck trying to find their friend, basically, and the whole theme is about friendship, right? Like it's not anything too overly complex. There's not a lot of there are still plot holes, but there's not like anything that's just you gotta suspend disbelief by a mile. um but yeah, what about you, Bernie?
Yeah, it is really. It's exactly what you said. It's not complicated at all. It is very cheesy,
Yes.
but its story is very straightforward. It's just and its plot as well. It's just boy is lost amongst all these new worlds. He wants to find his friends. Along the way, they discover the bad guy, and he stops the bad guy. There's It's just from point A to point B to the end.
Yeah.
And like you said before, it is you can definitely tell that it's a product of its time because with the story as well as the gameplay. Because what else was coming out around there? You had the Sly Cooper franchise,
Yeah.
you had the Jack and Daxter franchise, and
You
none
got
of
some of the
them.
Marios as well.
You had, yeah, yeah.
Trying to remember which one is the one. Is it Sunshine?
Sunshine came out back then too.
Yeah,
Yes,
I think that's like the
Luigi
main one
Mansion.
that it was trying to compete. Because I'm trying to think of like the other 3D platforming uh games that came out during that time period.
Hmm. But um, uh none of them had any complex story either. It was Mario is always the same. He has to save Peach.
Yeah,
um Same with Luigi's Mansion. He's trying to find his brother Mario. Sly Cooper, they're pulling off whatever heist in I think what came out then, I think it was Sly 2, so they were trying to gather all the pieces of clockwork. And same with Kingdom Hearts. It's nothing crazy. It is N- nothing at all like its future iterations, but that's for another video
yeah,
or another stream.
yeah. So or both depends on what you're watching on. If you're watching on YouTube or if you're watching right now on Twitch live. But besides
That's true.
self plugs, uh, going through this story, so I guess we'll just go through like some of the main major things, and then as we go along the way, I guess we'll hit on some of the anything else that comes up in terms of worlds that they visit and stuff. So basic story, right? You're introduced to, like you said earlier, kid who wants to go visit other worlds with his friends, and essentially, world is taken over by darkness. He gets split up by his friends, and he ends up getting a weapon that can save all worlds, essentially, right? So, um, definitely, it's a pretty simple story, but there are moments too. At least like just like looking at it, like really looking at it, it's kind of funny how over the top simple some of the things are. Like at least they set up in terms of them wanting to go on a raft, right? To to go visit these other worlds. Somehow they want to see another world on a boat, right? And the raft they make is not that great, even though they already have boats made for them. And the supplies they get as well are questionable, right? That for three people they want to get like three coconuts and like one seagull egg, like one glass of drinking water.
It was a
Like
jar, or
like
I'm sorry, not a jar. It was a bottle.
well, even if it was one person with that one jar, it's you gotta really
Well, you gotta ration it out.
yeah.
But that kind of adds to the charm that the first game had, where it was. Remember, they're a bunch of kids.
Right.
Like, for kids who were just dreaming to go see outside worlds, that is the perfect way to set that up. Because how else do they know how to travel aside from just going on a raft? They've been on that island their entire life. All they know is that boats take you from place to place.
True.
And with food, they don't know. Like, a kid doesn't know. Like, oh, I'm gonna be away from home for a week, so I need to bring enough food for each day of the week plus extra. No, they just think as long as I have something to eat and drink, I'll be fine. Um,
Right. Yeah, it kind of
and
emphasizes like the naive nature of being young, right?
yeah,
Like just sometimes you oversimplify things because that's just what you see, right? And
yeah,
that you don't know any better.
but it works well with Kingdom Hearts 1 in specific, because that sense of childlike wonder that Sora gets whenever he goes to a new world is really infectious.
Right.
Like, the amount of joy that he feels when he gets to, like, even when he gets to Traverse Town, he's scared. He's like, "Where's my island? Where are my friends?" But his first words are, "I'm in another world."
Yeah. There's an excitement to it. And then
Yeah,
since you did mention about that with Sora, let's talk about Sora like as the main character, right? Um, him being with his personality, right? Because like I feel like the main two choices, right, that they could have had for main character, and I think they also did mention was like with Riku as well, right? Like when I say they, I mean like Tetsuya Nomura and the creators of this, right? Uh, so decide. I feel like it was such a good decision to make Sora the one with his personality, the main character, right? Where at least if you are gonna have a story where a lot of it is based on the power of friends, right, and fighting off darkness, to have somebody who is as hopeful and optimistic as he is.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. You see it really in the first few hours of the game when Destiny Islands is starting to get swallowed up by the darkness. Riku immediately is like, this guy, whoever this man in the robe is, uh, said that we can go to other worlds. Let's go. But Sora, his first thought is, where's Kyrie?
Right.
Where, like, we have to stick together because we're friends, you know? But Riku is just, I want to go. I want to go now. This is our shot. And
Right.
that really shows that subtly, but it shows that Sora, his first priority is his friends, and that mentality is what has gotten him through like his entire adventure. As cliche as it is, he says it. When was the first time he said that my friends are my power?
I think when he's fighting Riku in the first time, uh, I want to say it's that because it's
Yeah,
basically when he's fighting with the with the wooden stick or the wooden sword, and basically then Donald and Goofy end up coming to help him out.
that wooden stick, that wooden sword.
Yeah, couldn't do anything
Uh,
with it.
but you know what I'm saying? Like, if it were Riku, he learns that eventually throughout the journey, but that's what makes his story arc great because you get to see how he basically comes into the role of a protagonist.
Right. Yeah, and
But
I feel like there's a lot of moments too where I remember we were talking about this earlier where uh there's this game I think does one of the better jobs of like showing Sora's flaws, right? Because there are moments where, especially because he is so young, he just kind of has a selfish nature to him, where people will be asking him, "Hey, you're the Keyblade wielder. Could you help us out?" And then he's just kind of like, "Well, I just want to go find my friends, man. Like trying to trying to save the world or anything." Even though there's like people who desperately need him.
yeah, that is true. Like, there are a lot of times where he'll put finding his friends in front of the mission of the Keyblade wielder has to save the world from falling into darkness.
Right.
And it's one of those things where if you're just looking at it like as a kid, you're like, yeah, he has to find his friends, but it isn't until you start thinking about it where, well, there is a responsibility that he has to uphold. You don't really see that until later, you know?
With great power comes great responsibility.
Ah, yes, those were the famous words of the guy on that can of beans.
Yeah, and this, you want to know how I remember that movie came out during that time period? Because I
How do
also
you
had
remember?
that game on the PlayStation 2.
That
I
was
was
also
all,
a fun game.
I was switching between Spider-Man and Kingdom Hearts.
It was also a great game.
Yeah, that was a good play. That one,
Yeah,
especially Spider-Man 2.
that
Play
was a
Spider-Man 2 if you haven't. Um,
that was a great time
yeah,
for
we
games.
might talk about those games, but
Yeah,
that'll be later. But
later.
yeah, so
So where were we?
yeah, so this story, basically just going through it, then essentially they use the Disney worlds as kind of like, and it feels like an episode by episode uh kind of strategy of telling the story, right, where they go into one world, right, they'll go into a deep jungle, and then they'll help Tarzan out, and then they kind of just resolve his problems, and then you'll get like a little bit of extra character arc for the overall story between Sora, Donald, and Goofy, and then they'll go to the next world, and like so on and so forth, right? Where what's happening in that world isn't like super consequential, but it builds up, right?
Yeah, yeah, definitely.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that I always liked about at least the way that they did that is the fact that at least they still connected it to the main story through the villains, right? So for the majority of the game, you think Maleficent is the big baddie, right? Until you find out it's Ansem.
Spoilers.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Sorry for this whole thing. Spoilers. If you haven't played this game, that's almost or that's legal. So just FYI. Just yeah. We're one of those people just saying spoilers like left and right. But whatever. Um, the fact that they had Maleficent as the person who was kind of connecting everyone, right? So you would see her visit other worlds. Like I always appreciated when she would go to, say, Agrabah, and you would see her talking to Jafar, or you would see her talking to Hades, right? And so on and so forth. And you were always building towards this one thing, right? And I don't think like at least like even though you do find out like oh like it's actually Ansem who's the main villain, I'm okay with it, right? Because they still do hint at Ansem the entire way of the game, right? They
Mm.
mention him all the time, so it's kind of fitting that that's the case, and also just that he's voiced by Billy Zane in this game, which is just fantastic, just grade A, perfect casting for that character. But
He does do a fantastic job.
yeah, like in every other game, he's voiced by Richard Epcar, and he does a fine job. But it's just I'm always gonna compare it to Billy Zane. It's just it's not the same.
That's true. It's not. But talking about the villains, I love the way that they handled the antagonist in this game. How
Like
it
in
was
general,
basically
or like a specific one, like Ansem.
in general. Like I love how for most of the game you're going up against classic Disney villains and how they're working together to stop you and to further Maleficent's goals.
Right.
Like it's just Kingdom Hearts does this thing with its characters where it finds this nice little balance between here are new characters who you've never seen before, you've never even heard of Sora before, but he's still lovable, he's likable. Um, and then you have like the Final Fantasy characters, you have all of the Disney characters. You know these, you know them, you already love them, and it does this good balancing act of um making sure that one doesn't exactly overshadow the other. You know what I
Right.
mean?
Yeah. One thing that I do appreciate, and this goes with I guess all the villains and then certain other characters. I feel like it's always like the older characters as well, like literally older in age, that they do with the connecting the Disney element with the specifically Kingdom Hearts lore, right? How like the lore behind the whole thing is that every world has a heart, right? Like a keyhole that is is basically the entrance to the heart of that world, right? So you can either lock it and protect it, or open it up and expose it to darkness, right? Um, but that idea, I like how there's a lot of characters that still actually know about it, even though they make a point in the game to basically say, "Oh, sorry, you can't meddle in other worlds," right? And for the most part, like most characters you meet don't really know anything about those things. But I like how people like Maleficent know, or even like from the good side, like King Triton knows about it, right? Genie even like kind of remembers it for a second, and then he just like, ah, well, it's probably nothing, right? But like these are people where you're like, okay, well, it actually would make sense that like they've been around for a while and they've probably heard a thing or two, or like I guess in Maleficent's case, has probably tried her best to find something like that, right?
Hmm. Yeah, it's funny how King Triton is actually. I want to say he's the first person to tell Sora like, "Hey, you can't just go messing around everywhere. You have a job to do."
Right, like he's the only one that it seems like, at least out of all the Disney characters, that knows exactly what he is. Right, like he's immediately right when he sees him, he's like, "Yo, man, like I know who you are. Like, come on, bro. Like you're literally holding the weapon of like the legendary Keyblade wielder, right? Like Keyblade Master or whatever."
Mhm. Remember when that meant something?
Oh yeah, well yeah. Then again, Sora's not a master, so what does it matter?
E- Even
Yeah,
though he's
just
been a Keyblade Master for 3 games.
yeah, it's just yeah.
Anyway,
We'll talk about that I don't know, in a overall whatever. We won't talk about that now. We'll just
moving on.
yeah.
Um, you are right. How, for the most part, it is cool seeing like what characters actually know about Sora and other worlds, and it's like the character. It's not random. Like, oh, Aladdin knows about it because reasons. It's
Mhm.
like, oh, King Trident has been the king of the ocean for Lord knows how long. He has an incredible amount of power. He's bound to know this. Or Maleficent, again, incredible amount of power, has dealt with a lot of arcane and magic shit, for lack of a better word. So she's bound to know this as well.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And I feel like that those are just the little things that they do that just help meld those things in together, right? Where you're not, even though a lot of the story is like, oh, we're just retelling the Disney stories, but there's more background that goes into that, and uh, that makes it more unique to Kingdom Hearts. That way, when you play the game, you're like, oh, this is the Kingdom Hearts genie and Aladdin and Tarzan and all these
Yeah.
characters.
But at the
So
same time, there's a sense of familiarity to it.
right, exactly. Like they don't have to spend too much time establishing these characters.
Yeah.
Speaking of characters, right? What about these characters in general in the stories? I guess more so the main ones to the main plot, right? Like the Sora, Riku, Kairi, Ansem. Um, let's talk about them.
I really appreciate how we're gonna keep using this word because it's just very fitting for the game. How simple they are,
Right.
like especially in Kingdom Hearts One. There's not too much depth to them. Like Sora is just this goofy, plucky kid who wants to save his friends, and he's the hero of a Japanese RPG. So obviously, his main values are friendship, being a good guy, and he wins because he's the protagonist. You know.
Obviously.
And like with Riku, he's his best friend and rival. So he's basically the opposite of Sora. He is more angsty. He is more prone to mess up because he's not the protagonist. He is uh at one point he's more driven by his ambition than by friendships.
Hmm.
And then Kyrie is basically Princess Peach.
Yeah, yeah, pretty much. You just got the whole game is about finding the princess, and she
Yep.
is literally a princess, right?
Yep.
So, a princess of hearts.
And then you have Ansem, who is basic uh basic villain material. Just he wanted to know more. He got obsessed with his research, and he became evil.
Yeah.
He is the bad guy because darkness, and darkness is bad.
I think that's why like that there's so many reasons, like just to preface this, like Ansem is one of my favorite villains, but it's like I understand that he's not the best villain in the series, but I feel like because he's so over the top simple and just I don't know. There's little there's just like it's similar to like the Emperor, right? Where like how you're saying it's just literally like something something dark side, right? And I just like the charm there is to that, and at least like especially it goes back to like Billy Zane, the way he performs that character. He's just all in when he does that, right? And you buy into it. Like it does, like even though it can be seen as just like kind of typical and cheesy from the outside, while you're in it, you're just like, okay, I can buy into this.
Yeah, yeah,
Like it's, I feel
and
like it's just embracing it, right?
exactly, it's embracing it, and that makes it so great.
Yeah. So, and then I guess going back to Riku, right? Because Riku definitely, I would say, has the most uh, depth and character arc, or at least the biggest character arc throughout the series, and especially in this game. Um,
He has the only character arc in this game.
well, yeah, yeah. Sora just becomes goes from like good with like naive
He just goes
tendencies
from being
to less
like,
naive. Yeah, like I
now
don't
how
know.
should I put this? He just goes to being good with a purpose.
Yeah, I would say you, and it's not necessarily a bad thing because I feel like Sora is one of those characters that they always say like I feel like anytime in storytelling people will always say oh like the character needs a character arc, right? And you do need character arcs, but the main character doesn't technically have to be the one with the character arc, right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
and you just need if you're gonna make that main character not have it, he just needs to affect other people around him, right? And I
Mm-hmm.
feel like Sora does a good job of that, right? Like he affects Riku and changes him for the better. Even somebody like Donald, because Donald is like Sassman 9000 in this game, right?
He is.
Like even before he meets Sora, he's kind of sass and goofy for no good reason, right? And that man just he doesn't deserve it. But I feel like his relationship with Sora does change that, right? And
Yeah.
it's there's other examples, right, that I could go with, like people like a Marty McFly in Back to the Future, or like an Indiana Jones, right? Like these are characters that kind of stay the same throughout, but these are still great movies because of that, right? Like we're not watching for Indiana Jones to change as a person.
Yeah. And another thing too, this is a video game. Like this is something that Kingdom Hearts 1 did amazing. It is a game first and a story second, you know?
Right.
Like because sometimes they'll try to do the opposite in a video game where they'll make it heavily on the story, but then they'll still try to sell it as like, oh, this is an action RPG, but its mechanics kind of suck.
Right.
So at that point, you're just losing the entire purpose of a game. Make a movie instead, you know?
Exactly. Yeah, I think they definitely do prioritize it well because at least just for us even like we still play the game because it's just fun to play, right?
Mm.
Even with all the flaws it has in its story, and it definitely does have its own flaws, but they still make an enjoyable experience, and that's at at the end of the day that's all you want in a game.
Yeah. You want to have fun. That is the whole point of a game.
Yeah. Um. So let's see what else do we have with story wise before we start moving into gameplay. Let's
Um,
see. Looking at the notes. Basically, yeah, world's fun. Let's think. Okay, I guess we'll just go into like end game stuff because essentially we went through the main story very generally, right? You got essentially Sora and Riku at odds with each other, right? Riku just being pulled in by some bad company essentially, um, and then I guess we'll just talk about like the main thing in the story, right? Like the biggest moment in all of Kingdom Hearts, right? Which is Sora stabbing himself in the heart to free Kairi. So
yep.
a lot happens in that whole sequence, right? Because you get essentially that's when you get the reveal, like the fight right before that is the reveal that Ansem is the big bad. That Ansem got control of Riku and using his body as a vessel, right? And it's kind of similar to like I was gonna say Star Wars, uh like Harry Potter, right? Which also the movies came out during that time, so it's kind of not too much of a surprise. But the idea that uh, Ansem was basically just existing, like his soul was floating around somewhere, I guess, and you see him in the form of that hooded figure with the brown cloak, but he just needed a body in order to exist, right? So it's similar to Voldemort in that aspect, which I always found very interesting.
He is like Voldemort, huh?
Yeah,
I never really noticed that until you just pointed it out. But it's true. That's the exact same theme. Amazing.
just gotta seduce some kids and then basically, just
Oh, okay, okay. That is
just kidding,
I don't
guys.
know.
Do not do any of that. Forget I
That
said that. So,
all right then. Yeah, I think now's a great time to go into the gameplay part of it, and this is gameplay wise. It is, how should I put this? it puts such a great emphasis on exploration. This game compared to its successors. Is successors the right there? The right word there?
Yeah.
Yeah, because especially when we look at the very first world of Traverse Town, there's so many uh there's so many little entrances and doors that you can only open after you get thunder or after you learn fire or so on and so forth.
Right. Like there's definitely a lot of like every world feels different,
Mm-hmm.
and you that's one thing that you don't get out of the later installments. It's and that's one thing I always do enjoy about this, like just playing it through again, is just being able to, like you said, being you'll see a treasure chest and you're like, okay, I need to get this ability, and I'll come back for it, and or how just things operate in general in terms of opening certain doors that lead you to one place. Like I always thought it was cool in like Agrabah how they have those keyholes randomly everywhere, and then you would open one gate, and then you'd have to find the other room, and then go to the next. Wonderland, you're literally going through the same room, but you're on different walls, and gravity just changes, which
Yep.
is pretty awesome. So yeah, and then things like
Monstro.
yeah, Monstro is another one where it it ends up looking all the same, but it's still like it because of that it's unique in its own way.
Mm-hmm.
Atlantica as
Oh,
well.
and
You're literally swimming in the ocean.
deep jungle with all its vines
Yeah,
and its swinging.
yeah. There's there's a lot to be had with each one of these worlds, and I
I
always
also love
like that.
the sorry, but I was gonna say just on Deep Jungle, I also love the little details that they decide to add in, like how when you get to the campsite, there's the chemistry set, and you can actually do something with it when you find like the instructions for the experiment.
Right.
Um,
There's definitely more puzzles in this game.
yeah, and that's a good thing for me because
Yeah.
exploration is a lot of fun. Like, why would I want to go to a new world, which is the entire premise of the game? Why would I want to go to a new world and not explore?
Right. Exactly. And that's just like an RPG in its essence, right? Like
Hmm.
that's why I like RPGs so much, because it's just okay, well like there's a main story here, but I can just go over here and start collecting this, start doing that, get all the pine cones, right?
Get
So,
all the pine cones,
yeah.
exactly. And it also, like you said, it has a lot of puzzles. So you have to think about how to get some of these treasure chests, how to get some of these items. It's not like in other games, it's just, oh, I have to wait until I have glide, then I come back and get it.
Right.
So that is I miss that really. I miss that sense of exploration in future games.
Yeah. It's definitely that's one thing that you see it's of its time. That's
Hmm.
when 3D platforming was at its height, right? And yeah, it is a shame that we don't have any more games like that, and like in this series as well, there's not really that much of that. There's still definitely exploration that they've added, but it's in a different sense.
That could also be the sense of nostalgia talking, but this is just our opinions and our feelings on it.
Yeah, yeah. We're the ones with the right opinion anyway, so it's fine, right? Just
Everything before 1776 was a mistake.
yeah. So
On that note,
good old Ron Swanson.
Ron Swanson.
So another thing that this game actually introduced that really wasn't ever done before. So because this was made by Square Enix, right, and Square Enix famous for making Final Fantasy, they in Final Fantasy it's a turn-based system, but in this game they have a in real time fast action RPG style of gameplay, right, which was something that really wasn't done before, or at least done well before, right, to this level. And this had the introduction of the command menu. So technically, like when you're doing something like attacking, right, you're not like pressing X to attack isn't technically to attack. You're hitting the attack command, right? But you can change that and go to your items and to your summons and your magic. but this all happens in real time, so you have to take into account the consequences of when you do that, as compared to, say, in Final Fantasy, it's just your turn, then their turn, and or so on and so forth, and essentially the game pauses, right, where you have the time to strategize for that. But part of the strategy of this game is being able to do it in real time of the fight.
Yeah, it is definitely a hell of a lot different than X is light attack, Y is heavy attack, B is dodge. You know,
Right.
it like you said, it is you have to take into account flipping through all the different command menus, and I like how it's not too simple nor is it too complex. Like it's not overwhelming how many command menus there are because you're really swooping through four: just attack, magic, items, and summons.
Yeah.
And it's all situational when you want to use them, if you want to use them. Because if you want to, you could very well just play through the game, just hitting everything with your keyblade.
Right.
It is an option. Or um, if you want to mix things up, you can throw in some magic and some summons along the way.
And I think that's one of the game's strengths, is that you can kind of choose the way you want to play it, right? Like even from the beginning, they give you build options, right? Where
Mm,
you can go and basically they give you the option of either prioritizing strength, defense, or magic, and then also getting rid of one of those strengths, right? And I guess essentially making it one of your weaknesses. Uh,
mm-hmm.
and from that, right, you can end up you don't really have too much your yourself. You don't make a difference in terms of uh how you build yourself, right? Like it's not like then afterwards you start getting yourself more magic boosts or anything like that. But the way the game does it, at least, is when you level up, you get certain abilities before others, right? Like by the time you get to level 100, which this is the only game that you get to all the way to 100, by the time you get to 100, then you have all the abilities, but you just get them all at different times, right?
Yep.
Where sometimes that could be a really good thing, other times that could end up hurting you, right? Where I think, like, if you get the defense build, right, you get like guard at a pretty early stage. I want to say it's like level 15 or something like that. But if you use magic, then you get it at like level 33. So you're already almost towards the end of the game and you haven't had guard, right? So it's just things like that to take into account. But when you use magic, right, you do get the benefits of that, where you get more magic based abilities and also just NP gauge in general to definitely strengthen your own magic stats.
I love the way that they use magic for combat in this game, especially against like different bosses and different enemies.
Right.
Because it's more than just this is a ranged attack. Like how in Skyrim you have fire, you have ice, and you have thunder. They all pretty much do the same thing.
Right.
But in this case, it each element, each magic ability has its use for each enemy or for each situation.
Yep. And one thing that I do like about that too, like how you're saying, it's not like they're all the same type of projectile, right? Like they all function differently as well, right? So you have fire is essentially, you can, if you just mash fire, you can essentially just use it as a machine gun. But that's the only one that's just a one projectile thing, right? You shoot fire and he just shoots it out like if it was a gun, right? But if you use Blizzard, it's multiple projectiles that go spread, right? Then Thunder would be essentially like an area of effect in the area that you're locked onto. So it's like you said, it's not just the element that you're thinking about picking, but it's how you want to take care of those enemies, right? Where you would want to use Thunder if you have multiple enemies, and you might want to use Fire if you only have one that you're focusing on. So it's just like that balance of those spells. Same thing, how they also have a defensive spell with arrow, and then gravity, as well as its own unique percentage based attack that can also help you with aerial combat.
Yeah, it's kind of goes back into how we said you can play this game how you want.
Mhm.
you don't have to just be like, oh, only attack or only magic. You could mix and match. Like, for example, the first time I played the game, I really only hit everything with the keyblade. But later on, I would start thinking like, oh, I'm fighting something that's 15 meters away from me. Let's use fireball. Oh, there's a group of enemies that just spawned over there, but I don't have direct line of sight. Thunder. Five. What were the flying heartless called? The ones that look like pepper shakers.
The like all the elemental ones.
Yeah.
Uh, they all have different names. There's like the Blue Rhapsody, the Red Nocturne. No, blue. No, one of them
I
something
thought.
Nocturne. They're uh,
But those things, you know
yeah,
what I'm talking. Like
blue, red,
a
and
lot of
yellow, and
times,
green.
yeah, a lot of times those things will spawn like in a wall in front of you. That's the perfect opportunity for Blizzard.
Yes.
So it's really funny like how, well, I don't think funny is the right word, but it's interesting how many different ways you can take combat into, you know.
Yeah. You make it unique to that to your fighting style, and that to
Hmm.
me is always just like a good way to make a game, because then it's just
Yeah.
it feels more like your own, right? Uh, so those are some of the things that I always like about the combat, as well as just looking at the overall strategy that you do along with that, right? Because there's the strategy that you have yourself, but then there's also the way that they do parties and abilities, right? So with your parties, you can only have 3 party members at a time, including yourself. So in certain worlds, it's only Sora, Donald, and Goofy, so there's not really much to think about. But in the majority of the worlds you visit, the Disney characters that are there will be able to join your party, and then you have to mix and match based on scenarios of, okay, do I want to bring Donald in for this one, or Goofy, or I don't know, Ariel, right? And that'll always be something that will greatly impact how the fight goes. And I always appreciate whenever there's that added bit of a strategy you have to do going into the fight, along with picking abilities to customize your combos and uh, just how you like to play the game essentially.
Yeah, and strategy is very important for this game in particular when it comes to its boss fights, because I want to say this has the most unique boss fights in the entire series, or
Yeah,
boss mechanics, I should say.
I think so too.
Yeah, because it's Jafar is my favorite example, because the goal of fighting Jafar isn't just to beat him to death; it's to get him in his lamp, you
Right.
know, or even Oogie Boogie, where when he turns into the giant, I I always call it like a giant house, but it's really
Yeah, it's
just
kind.
him with a bunch of,
He's just overflowing his layer, his secret layer. Like
yeah. But even then, you have to. There's a 3D platforming coming into effect. You have to climb up on him and hit all of his different weak points.
yeah. No, that's the thing. Like each boss fight is a lot more memorable in this game, rather than it's just like you just squaring up against um that character, right? uh there's like always kind of a gimmick or something that you have to get around, right? Like how you're saying
Hmm.
with Jafar, you fight Jafar directly at first, but then when he turns into a genie, it's, oh, I have to I have to beat Iago up basically and get the lamp, right? And same thing with Oogie. uh but if you compare it to something like even Kingdom Hearts 2, right, which is a great game, but you'll have something like the Shan Yu fight, right, where it's kind of like you're guarding the door, but all you really have to do is just fight Shan Yu. There's not really like there's a couple of random heartless that kind of get in your way, but not really. Um, like I think a better example of like the way they do it in Kingdom Hearts 1 is like the Clayton fight, right, where you're fighting Clayton at first, but then he hops up on the lizard, and then now you have to take knock him off the lizard, right? And then you have to fight both of them. technically you only have to fight Clayton. The fight ends with fighting Clayton, but most of the time, like yeah, like it'd be ideal to take one problem out first, right? So you get rid of the lizard and then get rid of Clayton. But like it makes
And
that fight unique is the point I'm trying to get at.
yeah, thinking about it, in Kingdom Hearts 2, the main gimmick that they had was with the getting the orbs to fill a bar.
Right. Like
You
it
do
was
that.
almost always with that gauge.
Yeah, it was always with the gauge. Like with Yu in Space Paranoids, in where else was it? I think you do it in Timeless River as well.
Yeah.
But it's oh, you do it twice in Space Paranoids with the what's that one part of the game where you have to freeze all the warning screens?
That's pretty much it. Yeah. It's just
Yeah. And then the boss that you fight a little bit after that, hostile program.
yes.
You have to get
Yeah.
all the orbs
They
to freeze
they
him.
rely on those gauges a lot, and
Yeah,
it works for the game in the way that that combat is done, but it's one of those things that it can be seen as lazy, right? Whereas with
yeah.
KH1, there's a lot more there's more variety in each boss fight.
No, it's exactly like you said. They're all just more memorable.
Yeah. Yeah, and then
Like
I think one of the biggest showings of that too is the secret bosses, right? Where
yes,
yeah, so you'll get something like Phantom, right? Where Phantom you straight up have to use magic. If you haven't used magic the whole game, you get over it, right? You can't beat this guy without doing it. And like what I like about him is you almost have to use almost every spell that you have, right? You have to use the main three elements of fire, blizzard, and thunder. But then there's also the fact that you're literally racing against the clock, right? And uh, he has the clock, the Big Ben, just count down, and if you don't, you stop on it, then your teammates and then eventually you will die, right? And there's just no coming back from that. And I always liked the way that they design that. It can be a bit repetitive, but at least it's something uh, that you have to figure out and you have to actually learn.
no, yeah, it's a pro and con kind of thing. Con, it can be repetitive. Pro, it's different. You have to figure it out on your own.
Right.
And this was back in an era where you couldn't just go online and find a guide for it too. So you had to legitimately figure it out on your own.
Yeah. It took me a while to figure out that I had to stop the clock. Like I was like, wait,
Hmm.
why? Like I guess I just can't do anything about Peter Pan dying and then Goofy and then now I'm dead, right?
Yep. Yep. But there was
But
a joy to figuring out how it worked.
yeah, that one, Kurt Ziza as
Kurt
well,
season.
right? You can't use magic during that fight, like or at least during certain segments of that fight. You can't use magic. Um, and what else was there? There's Sephiroth. Sephiroth is just a really well made kind of that one. You just kind of have to just smack him with the keyblade because I don't think he's weak to any real magic. Ice Titan is a pretty cool one. And then for final mix, you get Unknown, and that one I always love that fight.
I love that they included unknown or
Zemnis. We can
Zemnis.
just say it. Yeah,
Yeah,
we're in the
yeah. I was gonna.
spoilers, Bernie. We're all about those spoilers.
I love how they threw Zemnis in there because like we mentioned before, Sora stabbing himself with the dark keyblade. That I can't remember. Does that thing have an official name or is it
Yeah,
just
yeah.
dark?
I just can't remember what it is.
Well,
Uh,
but that thing, that's really where like a lot of not just the sequels but also the side games spring off from.
right.
And Zemnis is a good way of like throwing Zemnis in there is a good way of showing like, hey, there's more to it than what you just did.
Exactly. Like there's consequences to this.
Yeah, it's not just oh, he's back after his selfless act by the magic of friendship. He has returned.
Well,
Praise
it
be.
kind of is like that, and then in future games they kind of say, hey, there's more consequences to it. But I would say yeah, Xemnas is in this game is like the biggest one, right?
Yeah. Also the creepiest one.
Yeah, I love the song that they play for him too in this game. Great.
I love the cutscene, how it has the text like shaky and distorted.
Yeah,
That was great.
that's it. They did a real good job. That one's probably my favorite boss fight in this game. But I think it's just because like I just really like Xemnas. Um,
Demnis is great.
yeah, but yeah. Anyways, actually, speaking of music, I was saying that was one of my favorite songs that they play. Yoko Shimomura.
Yoko Shimomura.
As far as I know, this is like the first major game that she uh composed basically the soundtrack to. Phenomenal job. Like throughout the entire series,
It was.
especially in this game, she does an incredible job. Like there's anytime I listen to the soundtrack of this game, there's almost I can't even think of at least a bad song. Like I don't know, can you?
I can tell you my least favorite songs are uh some of like the first Gummy Ship songs.
Right.
But like you said, they're not bad. It's
Oh,
just I like others more.
yeah.
Like this is the birthplace of Destiny, you know?
And that's still probably the best song. Like,
Probably is, yes.
and that's not to say she didn't make anything like near as good because she made some really good stuff. Like, especially when we get to
Yeah.
Kingdom Hearts 2, like there's
I'm
some pure gold
excited.
there. Like,
I'm excited for Kingdom Hearts 2. Like I've told you many times, Kingdom Hearts 2 is my favorite Kingdom Hearts.
yeah,
Like
it's
I have played more Kingdom Hearts 2 than I have any other Kingdom Hearts games. I think the only games that match up to how much time I spent in Kingdom Hearts 2 would be the Smash series as a whole, Skyrim, Monster Hunter, and Sly Cooper.
yeah. Oh yeah, I know for a fact it's the game that I played the most without question. So
Yeah, and you play it the fastest.
only what am I now for 41st fastest.
41st fastest, but still, that's faster than me.
uh, I guess I might as well plug myself now. If you want to watch
Go for it.
average speedrunner speedrun the hell out of Kingdom Hearts 2, watch Crazy Kazi on Twitch. Probably gonna be streaming next week on Friday. I try to just at least do once a week on the weekend. So uh, yeah, definitely definitely stop by. So
Say hi.
yeah, say hi, say hey. I saw the Hansem reports. I listened. My ears were soothed by your knowledge, but get better mics. I know we need better mics. Just
Are
calm down, sir. That's
are
all I'm
we
saying.
soothing people with our knowledge?
Uh, I don't know. Maybe I'd like to think that we are.
That's a good mentality. Um, but we can't like how should I put this? Just thinking about soothing sounds to the ear, and just thinking about Yoko Shimomura, it's like I just love her work. I have no other way of saying it. Like I'm just a huge fan of her work.
Yes, yes. Just stop by and be like, I too love Yoko Shimomura, and I'll know that
Yeah.
you saw the podcast. Just
Or just a very big fan of Yoko
even if
Shimomura.
I didn't soothe your ears, let her because she's way better at doing that. So
What's your favorite song from Kingdom Hearts 1 that isn't Destiny?
okay, yeah. I was gonna say make it more of a challenge. Oof, that's a good one. I really like towards the end of the game the World of Chaos songs. Um, I really enjoy that. Like pretty much all the Ansem songs at the end. Just yeah, like World of Chaos when you fight him like 1v1. I never remember the names of these songs. Just like when they play. Uh, The only one that I do know the name of, Night of Fate, I really like, uh, which is the one that they play when you're leaving Destiny Islands and like the Heartless attack, and then they also play it in your first visit to Traverse Town. Yeah, those would be like the standouts for me at least. What about you?
I love Traverse Town.
Just like
I
the
think that
main
has
theme?
just the main theme of Traverse Town. Yeah,
Oh, okay.
it's just so
Throwing in the
like
battle music too, or
the main theme for me is what does it. Like it just has this sense of like it's this balanced sense of comfort and wonder that's just amazing to me.
yeah,
Like when you listen to that song, you are basically, at least I feel what Sora must have felt when he first got there.
right. Like it's exciting to be in this new place. Like it's not scary or anything. It's just like it's something new to go see.
Yeah.
I could definitely see that. It's definitely a good one. Like it's
Hmm.
like all the songs in this. They're all good. Um,
Well, speaking of, I really love how they use Traverse Town in the first game as a hub world.
sure, yeah.
Like
I think
both,
they do a better job of that than other games. Like
yeah,
specifically
yeah.
with Traverse Town, like because there's a lot more of a natural need to go back and
Hmm.
visit.
Like it's where you regroup with Leon, who is basically your it's your HQ, and he's basically your command.
Yeah,
Because for most of the game, it's just, hey, let's go back to Leon, and Leon will say like, well, you have to save more worlds, or we should go to Hollow Bastion, you know.
right,
Um, and even still, like that's when you find Kyrie and wake her up again. She goes back to Traverse Town, and it's where Merlin and the Fairy Godmother are, so you can learn more magic and summons. And it's I like the way how every couple of worlds you'll come back and all the characters will just regroup and be like, hey, what's our next plan of action after this happened.
right. I think
And
Traverse Town is probably the best at making the game feel like connected, right? Because
mhm,
at times when you go to these other Disney worlds, you don't really see too many of these other characters, right? It's just the Disney characters, and then except for something like Olympus, right, where you see Cloud. Besides that, there's not really many other times you see Final Fantasy characters in the Disney worlds in this game, right? But when you're in Traverse Town, you're seeing, like you said, you'll see Leon and Merlin like in the same room essentially, right? Or like or almost to it, right? Or like Sid is like, oh, like go give this book to my boy Merlin, right? Um, and it just makes the world feel like it's one interconnected thing.
yeah, yeah, without question. Like it helps tie together all of the how did you call it before? Like all of the episodic segments that each world kind of plays as.
Right,
And it definitely helps, like it helps make sure that the story is going somewhere and not just, hey, what's Sora gonna get up to on this world.
right. Yeah, it's always a way to keep it balanced, basically.
Yeah. And yeah, in other games, what typically happens is you'll go to a world, you'll clear it out, then the only reason you'll ever come back is for a treasure chest or because the secret boss is there.
Hmm.
And you will probably never talk to people there outside of cutscenes.
Right. Yeah. I think yeah, but because of that, yeah, Traverse Town is definitely one of the best hub worlds, probably the best one that
Yeah,
they've done.
yeah. And I especially love too how uh it's not just for story too, but for gameplay. Like that's where you go to stock up on items, to buy new weapons for Goofy and Donald, to synthesize, to talk to Sid.
To get your rewards for bringing back the Dalmatians.
Yeah, the Dalmatians, yes.
Yeah. Like it's one of those things where like in future games, right? And I get the convenience of it. Like they'll have all those Moogle shops like everywhere, but there's something about having them all in one place that you always have to go back and visit that then makes that place unique, right? Like it makes it a true hub world, right?
Makes it
where
memorable.
yeah, because like you look at like KH2, Hollow Bastion is supposed to be the hub world, but there's not really any need to go back to buy Donald and Goofy weapons, right? Because you could just go to any other Google shop and do that, or accessories or items and so on and so forth.
No, yeah, like anything besides Kingdom Hearts 1 is like falls into that trope of I don't have to go back there because I don't like I have no need to go back there, you know?
Yeah, and then now that I'm thinking about it too with synthesis, because that's where the only Moogle shop is in Traverse Town. The just going back to like how unique everything is in this game, even synthesizing the ultimate weapon and every just getting all of the items, the the enemies you have to face to get those items, they're all unique too, right? Rather than just you having to go in and just basically smack them with the keyblade and just hope RNG is in your favor, right? And just grind. In this case, each one you have to figure out these special enemies, what their gimmick is, right? And I
Like
think
with
that
the
like yeah, like the I don't even remember what they're called, but like the ones you were asking about the other day with the uh what'd you call them earlier? That what they look like? That's salt and pepper shakers, right? They
yeah,
added
yeah.
those special ones for final mix. There's the giant mushroom that you have to give it certain items, and then you get a better reward. There's like another mushroom that you have to hit. I think like if you hit them 100 times, then you're guaranteed to get the super rare item. But you have to figure out ways of hitting him 100 times within a certain time period, right? Uh,
hmm I always think of the white mushrooms and their game of charades.
yes.
I like it is. I will admit that it is kind of annoying, but it's also completely different to a lot of things that you'll see in games because it's like you said, it's not just oh you have to fight this kind of enemy and hope and pray to RN Jesus that he drops what you want. In this case, it's you have to figure out by what they're doing how to get them to give you their item. Like with the white mushrooms, if they're fanning their face, oh they're hot, so you have to hit them with blizzard. If what was the other one? Um, if they start floating, then you have to use gravity to bring them back down, and so
Right.
on and so forth. It's definitely it's different, you know.
Yeah.
It stands out amongst like a lot of other collectibles.
Yeah. It has its own charm to that, and I think that's always it's always appreciated.
Yeah, like Kingdom Hearts 1 is just full of charm.
Yeah. Oh no, that's basically what the game is, and that's why we still play to this game. Talk about it. So
Yeah,
I think we covered pretty much everything with it. Is there
yeah, I
anything
think we
else
did.
you wanna throw in there?
Yoko Shimamura is great. Um, the gummy missions in this game are subpar.
Oh yeah.
Um, Traverse Town is amazing, and it did a good job of setting up like future games,
Yeah.
like in a way that didn't feel like too not offensive, but it was smooth. Is what I'm trying to say. It's not
Right.
like in some games, like um, like in Halo 5, where
Oh god. What a comparison.
I know it's a huge comparison, but it's the first example that came to mind
Sure.
where the entire premise of setting up another game is left on a cliffhanger where
Yes.
you know that there's going to be another game only because it's like oh look at this looming threat that we're going to show you at the end of the credits.
Yeah.
But with Kingdom Hearts, the way it ended initially was it was kind of open ended. You know, it's
Yeah.
Sora and Donald seeing Pluto with a letter from the king, and they're like, let's go see what happens. And it just leaves that like, oh, what could their next adventure be?
Yeah.
Um,
I think because they paint it that way as more of an adventure rather than like how you're saying like oh this like looming threat and like then there's that one guy in the corner just like twiddling his mustache and like just I don't know like giving that evil laugh, right? There's
mhm.
it's a lot more openly accepted, right? Because then you're just like, oh, okay, like I can't wait to go on that next adventure. Not like, oh, well, like what we did was just pointless, right?
Yeah, yeah. And also too, with how you said that him releasing his heart had consequences, that opened up a lot of area for, oh well, what are those consequences? And from there came the nobodies, and oh well, Sora is a special case because he's a Keyblade wielder, and that's how you get Roxas. And Nominate is a special case because she came from Sora's body, but she originated from Kyrie's heart. So it just leaves a lot of doors for exploration open, and
Right.
that becomes a bad thing later on because of how complex it gets. But where we are right now, I think it was appropriate.
Yeah, I think so too. So that's I guess that's gonna be it for Kingdom Hearts. Um,
Yeah.
the review of it, and yeah, I guess we'll just go into the next segment, which will be our last. Basically, this last segment we just like to call Hansem's footnotes. Just any little things, just that kind of are just not really big enough news to be in our main news topic segment, but we just thought are kind of honorable mentions. And on top of that, just any little things that we're either watching, playing, things that we might think that you would be interested in checking out. So just starting off, one bit of news was that Westworld got renewed for season 4. So definitely excited about that. Right now they're still on season 3. They've only got I think 2 or 3 episodes left this season. Um, the shortest season yet. They've only had like 8 episodes. Normally they have 10. But definitely excited about that. That show's incredible. HBO's knocking out of the park with that. Um, another show that got another green light is The Mandalorian. Is already in season 3 pre-production. So basically, John Favreau is doing a bunch of writing for that show, and I believe they were already in full force with production for season 2, which is scheduled to come out later this year. Um, and I guess for things that I'm doing right now is actually recently last weekend the ESPN uh, released a documentary of Michael Jordan, or at least the first 2 episodes in a 10 part series of Michael Jordan called The Last Dance, and definitely recommend watching it. Obviously, if you're a sports fan, basketball, like without question, watch it. It's really well done. I like the way that they at least format it. It's similar to like a this like if you ever seen Slumdog Millionaire, right? It's similar to that where a lot of it is just focused around the Last Dance, which the Last Dance is what they coined the the last season that Michael Jordan was with the Bulls, right? Because their coach Phil Jackson was basically the owner told them, "Hey, this is the last season he's going to be with you guys." Like end of story, right? Because they had bad relationship with each other basically. And even though they had just come off their 5th championship in 7 years, they were like, "Oh well, this will be our last dance. We're going to win a 6th one," right? Which they did, but the the way that they tell the documentary is basically they go back and forth from that season to parts previous in Michael Jordan's life, and kind of like how each one of his experiences throughout life got him to that moment, right? How just because of his experiences and the way he handled them, he was able to basically become the greatest player of all time. So definitely recommend watching that. And we got a Pokemon news bit, Bernie. I think you were gonna talk a little bit about this.
Yeah, Pokemon put on their Twitter a few days ago how it's been 10 years since they released the Generation 4, which was Pokemon Diamond and Pearl in the Sinnoh remake. I'm already talking about about my hopes and dreams now in the Sinnoh region. And personally, that is my favorite generation of Pokemon. And them saying this isn't the first time that that Pokemon has said something that may allude to a remake of Generation 4, even though it's, you know, this is me really reaching here just because they said, oh, it's been 10 years, but I'm still hopeful. I'm still hopeful for that remake.
Maybe, just
Maybe
maybe.
one day. Maybe one day. Doesn't hurt the hope.
So anything you're playing, watching, reading?
I'm really just been playing Animal Crossing as of late. Um, haven't been reading anything crazy since a lot of mangas have been postponed or delayed for a bit. That's unfortunate, but
Yeah, in time they'll come back.
in
So,
time.
well, I think that's gonna do it for us tonight. Um, thank you for watching. I guess before we go, some plugs. Definitely watch me if you want to watch some speed runs. Go to twitch.tv/crazykazi. If you want to watch just an average guy try to get some PBs, definitely watch that. For this channel, definitely just come back here, follow if you want, if you're on Twitch, or subscribe on YouTube at the Hansem Reports. The Hansem Reports on Twitch and on Twitter. The Hansem Report, only singular because I guess characters was an issue. But
What's the limit?
yeah, you gotta limit. You gotta abide by the limits they give you. But anyways, so thank you for stopping by. We will see you next time.
Thanks. Have a good night.